You're still watching Newsday. We will now be taking you to Abuja, where political parties in Nigeria are in a roundtable discussion. Do stay tuned.
The presidential candidate for Action People's Party, Honorable Charles Standard, is here with us. Please, a round of applause for him. I don't know if you're not a captain, be a good but you're not a good be a captain. I want your loud applause for this gentleman. I will not stop if I do not recognize the presence of the National Chairman of ZLP, Chief Daniel, who is ably represented by the National Secretary. We also want to appreciate the National Chairman of Mr. Chief Alhaji Lawal Nana. I suppose he's represented, he's not here present, but he said he's on his way. He will join us shortly. Please, a round of applause for him. Also, we have in our list Ambassador Felix Johnson Osagwe. Ambassador Felix is the presidential candidate of National Rescue Movement, NRM. Excellent. We also have in our list representing the national chairman of APP in the person of Joko Alaforo. Please, a round of applause for him. Yes, the youths are not left out. Nigerian students are not left out in this presentation. And we have in our midst here today the person of the Senate President of NANS. NANS stands for National Association of Nigerian Students. Mr. Felix Nalwe is in our midst. Please, a round of applause for him. Yes, all the ethnic groups in Nigeria are heavily and well represented here. We have Mr. Godwin Meliga, who is representing the Council of Ethnic Youth Leaders of Nigeria. He is present here with us. Please, a round of applause for him. We also have Yusuf Kabiru, President Kaliwa, Consultative Movement, he is here with us. We have Adobe Sandra Aniche, Head of Communication, CSOs. Please, a round of applause for him. We have Mr. James Zenembe, Action Alliance Party. Please, a round of applause for him. Please, we have numerous persons here to appreciate and recognize. We have Frank Ikenga, former presidential candidate, Democratic Alternative DA. We have Muslims Turaki, vice presidential candidate of Boot Party. Please, a round of applause for him. And we have Manga Asha, governorship candidate of National State for Action Alliance. Please, a huge round of applause for all our dignitaries that are here today. I welcome you all. This is the final stage of the deliberations we've been having for the past 48 hours. Like I told us, we have been deliberating on the compelling issues that surrounds the 2023 general elections. And we have brainstormed, we have conducted ourselves as stakeholders. And after our brainstorming, after our going forth and back in arguments, disagreements, and agreements, we've come up with a communique which we could call the review of the 2023 general elections. Please, may I have the humble honor to call on the national chairman of Action Alliance, Chief Barrister Kenneth Uneze, to start to read unto us the communique that came out of our brainstorming. Please, a round of applause for him as he do that.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Mr. MC, Mr. Obed, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I remain Chief Barrister Kenneth Udeze, National Chairman, Action Alliance. Let me start by, first of all, thanking the Civil Society Central Working Committee for this great initiative by inviting the leaders of political parties on a roundtable. Just like the MC have said, having deliberated for the past 48 hours, let me officially reel out the position of this roundtable. Now, whereas there is a compelling need to review the conduct of the 2023 general elections, whereas critical stakeholders have not had an agreed position on the conduct of the 2023 general election, whereas direct participants, political party chairmen, and candidates for various positions have not had a platform where they sat together to analyze the conduct of the entire electioneering process. Whereas there is a need to sift and keep aside myths and fictions from the facts and figures of the election. The Civil Society Central Coordinating Council, having identified these needs, has put together a political roundtable to engage in a very robust discussion, interaction to identify the real issues. Therefore, after extensive debates and deliberation and following intensive analysis and ventilation of thoughts and ideas, the political roundtable reviewed as follows. The National Roundtable reviewed the technological innovations introduced by the Commission, including the Bimodal Voters Accreditation System, BVAS, and the INEC Result Viewing Portal, IREP, and commended both innovations as having helped to strengthen the integrity of our elections. The National Roundtable reviewed the pre-election internal discipline mechanism adopted by INEC, which helped reduce internal wrangling within the political parties and the tendency for factionalization of the political parties. I beg to digress a bit on this particular point. The roundtable have viewed seriously that there is no political party in Nigeria that doesn't have one or two issues in terms of their internal arrangements. However, we are calling on the man at the saddle of the seat of INEC to make sure, just like he have already started prosecuting Rex, who made the mess of the election, for example, in Adamawa State, to also narrow down their eyes on the staff of the Commission that have decided to play a role of politicians instead of civil servants. It's time to shake and reshuffle the Commission so that those staff that are causing confusion in the Commission can be weeded out. Having said that, the National Roundtable reviewed the pre-election political parties, and political parties and political actors were responsible for the vast majority of the tension and concerns about the election, and INEC conducted itself creditably in this area. The National Roundtable reviewed the preparation and pre-election logistic deployment by INEC and agreed that the Commission was punctual in meeting up and completing all its activity checklists on schedule, including logistics deployment of non-sensitive and sensitive materials. The National Roundtable reviewed the role of the BVAS and the in the electoral process and the roles the deployment of both innovations is playing in the various tribunals to prove the actual outcome of the elections. The National Roundtable reviewed the modus of collation and announcement of results and decried the wrongful use of armed security personnel to compromise the electoral process at the collation centers, and called for introduction of the use of technology in this aspect of the process. The National Roundtable reviewed the post-election application for certified true copies of relevant election documents by both petitioners and respondents at the various election tribunals, and commend INEC for making available the copies of the huge volumes required, including the digital reports of the BVAS and IREV. This, the Roundtable admits, reinforces the credibility of the election and the neutrality of the Commission. The National Roundtable reviewed the reports of continued efforts by politicians to compromise the BVAS machine for the upcoming governorship election in Imo State, my dear state, Kogi State. The Roundtable reviewed worrying reports that there are ongoing efforts to compromise the machines which were test-run during the general elections and currently being perfected on how to upload fake and false accreditation figures on the machine. This troubling issue is referred for further investigation and confirmation by the Roundtable leadership. The National Roundtable reviewed the publicly quoted expenditures of the Commission for the conduct of the election and adopts its view of financial experts at the Roundtable that the figures tally with the technological and other innovations by the Commission for the conduct of the elections. Issues such as effective security features on all the different result sheets for each election was novel and worthy of commendation, and made it impossible for result sheets of any polling unit to be used in another polling unit. They noted the situations where to manipulate the collation of results, and at all times agreed that armed security personnel were deployed by politicians to compel the unlawful actions. Roundtable calls for further engagements with security agencies on redefining their roles in electoral processes and stemming the tide of security personnel aiding the rigging of election, and calls on the National Assembly to amend the Electoral Act to include deployment of technology in the collation and announcement processes of our elections. The National Roundtable reviewed the outcome of the 2023 general election and adopted the fact that this was the most politically diverse National Assembly in the history of our country and in the history of our democracy, with no fewer than 6 political parties having representatives in the National Assembly. The Roundtable observed that in the House of Representatives, members from the minority parties are in the majority in the House, showing a truly representative House as voted by the people. The Roundtable agrees that this speaks directly to the integrity and credibility of the election and commended the Commission for performing well in this regard. The National Roundtable therefore frowns at the stereotype attack on the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who happened to be the same person that put everything online to push through the technological innovations and reforms, cleaned up the voter register, is prosecuting and disciplining staff as high as the State Resident Electoral Commission, insisted that beavers must be used for the election. The Roundtable views the attack as expression of ill to achieve objectives which may not be noble. Roundtable plays the role of some local civil society organization on this unpatriotic and selfish report, which was presented without light. The National Roundtable criticized the election observation report of the EU, which falls below standard of any report by on election observation mission. The Roundtable wondered how the EU could rely on the report of few observers deployed urban centers, be representative of the over 180,000 polling units in the country. The National Roundtable The appointment and removal of the leadership of the Commission should not be at the whims and caprices of the executive, and that is sought obtained. The chairman of INEC cannot be removed. The National Roundtable, having analyzed the pre-election, election day, and post-election outcomes of the elections, and without of the 2023 election, and condemns in strongest terms the attacks on his personality and the calls for his removal from office. The National Roundtable therefore calls for the support of all stakeholders, particularly the new security chiefs, to the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission for the upcoming November governorship election coming up in Imo State, Kogi and Bayelsa, so that the performance at the general election will be surpassed. While thanking all the participants for their sincere contribution, may I, on behalf of myself, my Great Party Action Alliance, the National Think Tank Committee of a Great Party, my brothers, Chindan Wayan was ably mentioned, Alhaji Nalado, and every other participant that participated throughout this period of deliberation, urge all Nigerian citizens in public office to continue to do their best at all times in the interest of Nigeria. Thank you and God bless you.
Political parties, aspirants in various forms. Please, I want to hear your round of applause. Because I want to see a standing ovation. A standing ovation. A standing ovation. It is a well-articulated communique arising from this National Roundtable. Thank you very much and get seated. While you are getting seated, please, we have two big masquerades in the house, our partners in progress. May I take the honor to invite to the podium the Executive Director, Center for Transparency, Madam Wadi. Please, can you come up to the podium? A round of applause as she's coming. Madam Faith Wadeshi is the Executive Director, CTA, is a household name to the civil society organizations. Please, Madam, just go there. Thank you, you're welcome. A round of applause for her again. She is a household name to the civil society organizations. You are welcome now for joining us on this August occasion. Again, in our midst is another heavyweight in the person of Mr. Emeka Ononamado. Mr. Emeka Ononamado is the immediate past Residence Electoral Commissioner of Enugu State. Please, a round of applause for him while he walks on to the podium. Please, a resounding round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Emeka Ononamado. We appreciate your presence. These are heavyweights when it comes to electoral reforms, issues of civil society organizations.
Take the name.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming around. Thank you. All right, after he's seated, may I call on our keynote speaker, Mr. Ezenwa Nwabo, the chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms, to give us a keynote speech. Thank you, Mr. Ezenwa Nwabo. You have the floor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The leaders of political parties that are here, my very good friend, the chair of AA, Barrister Ken, thank you for those inspiring communique that you presented to us. And then the various chairmen and representatives of chairmen of political parties, I want to thank you. Former resident electoral commissioner, Enugu State, Dr. Emeka Ononomadu, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I want to thank the leadership of the CSO Coordinating Council for inviting me to give the keynote. The keynote is actually is actually taken from the piano. Those first keys that you have that inspires the rest of the music is what a keynote. But you know, in Nigeria, when you tell people to give a keynote, they turn it to a lecture. I'm going to just take just a few things from what my brother and friend, the chair of AA, has said. First is that the 2023 election witnessed logistics challenges, undeniable logistic challenges. And there are no pretensions about that. And that happened first and foremost because we're a big country. Our topography can be challenging. That is one side of it. But those things did not just happen on us, they've always been there. So we should have found a solution to those challenges. The next is the subversive activities of certain elements within the Independent National Electoral Commission that are managing the election by first and foremost ensuring that the number of vehicles that were meant to be deployed to make sure that materials are taken from different points, different polling units, different areas, were not taken there on time. We also have the challenge of the security that has to accompany those materials from one point to the other. In most cases, we find out that the security agent starts their march past in the morning before escorting those vehicles. So logistics challenges, we must, as a nation, address those perennial logistics challenges because it affects the punctuality index for every election. And there is no way we can continue a situation in which we announce that elections will start at 8:30 and end about 2:30, and in many cases it extends even to the next day. Those are things that we need to deal with. The second issue is the deification of technology. We have deified technology to the point where we have given the impression that technology will solve all our problems. But even the most advanced technologies in the world are very cynical in deploying technology to the election. But for the 2023 election, we must segment the different ways in which we deployed technology. And that is perhaps the challenge that quite a lot of people have. The technology that was used for 2023 election was a cost-saving technology. Cost-saving because it is the same machine that was used for voter registration, that was used as BVAS, that was also used as IREF. Ordinarily, what then will have happened is that we will have bought data capturing machines the way we did in previous elections, and then, spend that huge amount of money buying laptops all over the country. That money was saved by the IVEC. And that is not coming out in discussions that 2023 election was one in which money was saved for the country through the deployment of technology. The second part of this is that this same technology was used for accreditation and voting. And every report that you have seen, both positive and negative reports, have indicated that the beavers worked 98% in the places where it was deployed. And my simple understanding of grading in scores is that if you have 98%, that is an excellent score. But what has happened is that many people have ensured that that part that the voting and accreditation went on in 98% of does not come to public space. And what have we done? We have stayed on the announcement, the declaration and announcement of results, and the non-upload of results in the IREF. And through that, we have criminalized the use of technology in 2023 election. But the truth of the matter is that announcement and declaration of results in our election is manual. It is manual because Form EC8A is given to party agents and also given to the security agents. It is only after they have collected these documents that the result is then uploaded into the result the portal. Now, what is the value of this portal? Why are we celebrating the portal? We are celebrating the portal because in previous elections, if you are a researcher in Nigerian election, you cannot find any result in the cloud from 2003 to 2015. You are not likely going to find the result of elections in the cloud in Nigeria. But in 2019, with all the weaknesses that we saw in the transmission of results, today, anyone who is researching Nigerian election can find some results in the cloud. That is a positive. So technology failed in one place, which is the non-timely upload of results, but it does not fundamentally affect the whole process of election result management. And that is key in understanding how technology failed in 2023. We also have to know that for the country to make quick progress in elections, there are 2 or 3 institutions that we need to engage more forcefully than we have been doing. I have said it repeatedly that 90% of the time after election, we descend on the Independent National Electoral Commission. Rightly so at times. But the truth is that without the efficient security provisioning, we are not going to have elections right. Today, we are outsourcing the whole idea of election offenses to something that is not created. We are still talking about electoral offenses commission that is yet to be created. And we have given the security agencies comfort in doing their work to ensure that slap that is given to somebody on election day is not going to be treated as slap that is not already in our constitution. The laws are broken when that happens. The final and most important institution is the judiciary. Today, the chairman of this session, Barrister Ken, talked about sanctions for INEC officials who are complicit in the places where they have made elections, subverted elections. But the truth is that who has found out that those who have been sanctioned by INEC have been recalled by the industrial court. Many of them have been asked to be replaced by the industrial court. And so the role of the judiciary in making sure that punitive sanctions are not given to people who break the law is something that we need to take up. Having said that, I want to appreciate the council for inviting us. I think that rather than continue to condemn Professor Mahmood, we should celebrate him. First and foremost, he saved money. 2, he also put in a process that has delivered perhaps one of the fairest elections that Nigeria has ever had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is the voice of President Mahmoud. It can never be otherwise. Chairman Partners for Electoral Reforms, we appreciate you. Please say every round of applause for him. Now we've heard from the political parties, we've heard from the CSOs. I want to hear from the man who was actually in the field. The immediate past Resident Electoral Commissioner of INEC. We have to speak to all this moment. Please, Mr. Emeka Onamadu, please be time conscious. We don't have all the time. Please.
Yeah, you can speak.
He is the man that saw, he witnessed, he felt it, all of this. So at this point in time, let him talk to us about what he saw and what he felt and what he did. Thank you very much. I will be constrained, sir, to just give you about 3 minutes to speak to us. I am very sorry about that because we don't have all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. The chairman of the political parties present, the civil society organizations, the media. I'm pleased to be here. And first, when I was invited to come and speak on this emotional, sensational, and sentimental issue, which is called election in Nigeria, I didn't hesitate to accept the invitation because I've been always looking for the opportunity to express my personal, humble opinion. Be that as it may, I am still somehow worried about certain psychosomatic factors, which the American Psychological Association called election stress disorder, which most Nigerians suffer from before, during, and after every major election. And that creates a very choked environment that may not allow people to listen to you very, very well. But I think that the disorder has come down and we can talk to each other. What is my first point of call? With this fear, with this disorder, which even American Association of Psychological Groups say happens all over the world, you can catch it in Nigeria, where you have a combination of election tension, security tensions, ethnic tensions, and religious tensions put together. Somebody was wondering, will INEC conduct that 2023 election? All of you were all perplexed about whether it was going to happen. Then the election took place. For me, it is the first mark to score. That under that very troubling time that INEC was able to pull that election through is a kudos for me as a former insider. If I stretch it beyond that, you will ask yourself, how many African countries, how many developed countries will, under the present condition, pull out such an election despite identified challenges? That is where I will come from. Number two, we all know that election is not just that day you go and vote. There are build-ups to the day you go and vote. And the build-ups are so much important like the day you vote. Therefore, if you want me to assess the work, for us who have been on the saddle, I sleep in the office a week before the election, because if you step out, something can go wrong. It doesn't happen in any country. Yet, at the end of that election, you will get barrages of criticisms and frustrating comments, as if you did nothing. One, I'm sure that most Nigerians have not been exposed to most of the laws that guides everything that the election administration agency do before the elections. Take for instance the voter registration exercise. it became continuous voter registration exercise under Mahmoud Yakubu instead of the usual ad hoc registration, which we normally have 1 month, 2 months before the election. That is a step forward. BVAS, as far as I'm concerned, is the greatest revelation of our time, and it was introduced by INEC while I was there. I was part of the group that actually went through the turbulent period of appraising whether it will work or not. There were situations where they said, no, there are certain locations in the country it could not work. Today, the 2023 election has exposed to us that BVAS indeed can work in all the nooks and crannies of our great country of Nigeria. So that is a plus. You go down the line, the political party primaries, I'm happy I'm speaking to most political party officials here. We have never had this level of lesser rancor-free political party primaries before an election. And that was a build-up. The CVR for me was like a carnival of participation by Nigerians. And today, we will keep growing. I will advise that in analyzing, in reviewing 2023 general election, we should, as a people, apply that principle of appreciative inquiry. Let us first of all gather the good aspect of it, and then look at the bad aspect of it, and compare and see whether we have made any step. If we have, yes, we will keep building that institution. Let me say here, before I drop that one, INEC is that institution through which citizens transmit power to their elected representatives. The best, I'm sure politicians will not like this speech, the best they want is break it down so that even when I fail, I will have something to rely on to say, oh, you know, they criticize you that you've not been doing well or you've done well. Let us keep strengthening INEC and let's keep building INEC. By the time we are through with the work, you will be happy that our democracy will be likely going to overtake most of the older democracies in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you for that wonderful, erudite explanation and speech from you. Thank you very much. May I, at this point in time, appreciate and recognize the presence of Ambassador Isaac Ude, the National Chairman NRM. Please, can you wave to the people? Ambassador Ude, you're welcome. And we as well have a very heavyweight person here, and the person of Haji Lawal Nalado, the present national chairman of our board, two-time national president of IPA. Please, we appreciate your presence. Thank you very much. Now, going forward, I want to call on the people actually that felt this electoral process. Just one person to speak from them. And please, sir, I am appealing to you to use just 2 minutes to talk to Nigerians. I want to invite in the person of Honorable Charles Ostandali, the presidential candidate of Action People's Party. Just 2 minutes of your speech, please. We don't have all the time on earth. Quickly.
Welcome, Your Excellency. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Take it to your mouth so that it can be.
ladies and gentlemen, may I stand on the existing protocol? My name is Charles Osita Nnadi. I was one of the presidential candidates under the banner of APP, Action People's Party, at the last election. I felt aggrieved after losing the election and ordered my lawyer the outcome of the election. However, after a series of meetings with my lawyers, we discovered that we were moving in the wrong direction. We got a report from CTC of INEC with Beavers and IRS report. It became obvious to us that the election was free and fair than we believed. Yes, there might be issues regarding the conduct of the last election, but however, standard of checking if the elections was free and fair or if there were massive rigging is the standard of substantial compliance and substantial non-compliance with the provision of the law and the Constitution. However, we reviewed the document, separating facts from emotions. We instructed our lawyers to withdraw the petition. It is obvious that only 3 political parties are still in court challenging the election, out of 5, which I was one of them. If only 3 are still, meaning that it is only 17%, and 83% are still in support, those who didn't go to court or who withdrew their matter, meaning that INEC did a good election or conducted good election. On that note, we endorse, I and my party, Action People's Party, APP, we endorse INEC. Thank you and thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Charles Mustard, presidential candidate, Action People's Party. Maybe so many things can be going into your mind between my humble self and the presidential candidate. However, just keep that to the corner. I want to, at this point in time, call on Alhaji Lawal Nalalo, the national chairman of the cause. Please, sir, most humbly, I will cut it off if you speak more than 3 minutes. Don't be angry with me.
You're a big fish, so we have to allow you to do the diff.
Thank you very much.
Please give him space to face the camera. Thank you.
Thank you, the chairman or the convener of this meeting, other distinguished guests here, ladies and gentlemen. I have already been introduced as the national chairman of ACCORD, and I was 2-time national chairman of Interparty Advisory Council, the umbrella body of the all registered political parties. And at the time I was the chairman of IPAC, we had 92 political parties. And thank God we were able to manage the situation, and we managed the affairs of political parties successful without having any rancor either with the government, the election monitoring organization, which is INEC, and other stakeholders, simply because we have always been engaged with all those stakeholders that have interest in the development of democracy in Nigeria. And the issue of the moment now is the credibility of 2023 general election. I am of the view, though I'm not here to praise anybody, but I am of the view that the elections we had 2023 is one of the most credible elections ever held in Nigeria. And I'm not surprised because, like I said in my introduction, being 2 times national chairman of Interparty Advisory Council, I know what had gone on between political parties, and all other stakeholders on managing elections in Nigeria. This process started about 6 years ago, 6 or 5 years ago, when Professor Mahmoud came on board as the chairman of INEC. They came with a lot of ideas, with a lot of innovations, to see how they can strengthen the electoral process in Nigeria. Before the introduction of card reader, elections were terrible. People were snatching boxes, doing a lot of things, changing strategies, and what have you. just to do things in their own favor. These things were minimized when card reader was introduced. Card reader was not introduced by Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, but when he came, he decided to improve on the card reader. That is why they came up with what we have today as beavers. And beavers performs far, far better and credible than the card reader. The issue of snatching boxes stopped. Issue of changing result sheet all stopped. And the reason why I am more convinced this time around that this year's election is the most credible election is because of two things. One, if you look at the participation of political parties in our assemblies, in National Assembly, out of 18 political parties, we have 8 being represented in the House of Senate and the House of Representatives. And we have 9 political parties in these various state assemblies. We have never had it this way. Even when we had 92 political parties, there was never a time we had more than 3-4 political parties in any of the assemblies. I'm sorry, please, I have to give this record to allow things to go straight.
Sorry, please, sir, we don't have a record for you, sir. Just conclude so that we round off, sir.
So I want to conclude by saying that the elections of 2023 is rated by political parties. We had a meeting today at our IPAC level, and we have agreed, about 75% of us, or 80, agreed that the election result, the election conducted 2023 is the most credible election. And I don't think there is any more credible person to give pass mark on election or to reject election than participating political parties. 18 political parties participated in this election. And we came up with a view, all of us, that the election was credible. Only that we are human beings, there is no way you can expect things to be 100%. But if you are going to give credence to the election, definitely you give it a pass mark of at least 80%.
Thank you. The next one, chairman of the party, we appreciate you for that comment. Thank you, sir, for coming up. Please, I want to most humbly one of our partners, the Executive Director of CTA, Faith Mwanishi, please.
Perfect.
You have the floor now. Let us have your view on the past 2023 general elections. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Please, a round of applause for her.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Please permit me to stand or sit on the already established protocol for this meeting. I want to appreciate those that have put this meeting together and the need for us to have this conversation. It should be a continuous conversation, it shouldn't be a one-off conversation. What I'm particularly happy about this conversation is that we're having the opportunity to sit with the political class to review the 2023 election. Usually, we'll be on our own, civil society on one side, political class on the other side, reviewing the election. But this is an opportunity that has come, and I hope that we'll continue to have these conversations so that we can understand from your own point of view, your perspective, why things went the way they are. Without making a very long speech, I would want to say that earlier this morning, we were in a meeting with INEC. INEC called a stakeholders meeting with civil society to assess the 2023 election. And to say that the 2023 election is one of the elections where we have had 1 or 2 positives and 1 or 2 negatives, as with all other elections. Preparatory to that election, a lot of us had put in a lot to that election to ensure that we had the kind of results. We depended a lot on technology, and we lost sight of the fact that technology is not 100% sailed through. So we had that issue, and I'm happy that INEC itself has also recognized and identified that that happened. not only that INEC recognized that happened, INEC also recognized the fact that its own staff contributed to undermining the process. And we commend them for being proactive enough to begin to prosecute those staff. As we all know, the suspended Resident Electoral Commissioner of Adamawa State is under prosecution right now, run by INEC. So we have all of these things coming, and I think that mostly recommendations should be what we put out to INEC so that we'll continue to make our elections progress. All of the speakers have highlighted one positive aspect of that election or the other, as well as highlighting the shortfalls of the election that we need to make recommendations about. I want to say that in preparing for the upcoming election, we need to critically examine, like we are doing now, the elections that have gone before us and make recommendations for it to work better. In the area of logistics, Eze had talked about that. In the area of inclusion, this is the time also for the political class to look at interpreting the inclusion of women into the electoral processes. We have found out that this election is one election where we did not have enough women representing us at the National Assembly and state assemblies. So we use this opportunity to say, political class, look at your internal politics, internal democracies, and ensure the inclusion of women in our elections so that at the end of the day, they are able to get that. And then finally, I want to call on the 10th Assembly to take as priority the passage of the Electoral Offences Commission Bill. That INEC as constituted now should not be saddled with the responsibility of prosecuting electoral offenders when we have had recommendations that there should be an independent body that is taking care of electoral offenders. So finally, I want to say that the 2023 election came up with very wonderful wins that we must build on going into the election for Kogi, Bayelsa, and Imo states that we must strengthen and then work on improving the other areas that we have lapses. Once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this. I hope that we continue to have this conversation.
Thank you. Applause to our own Executive Director, CTA's Center for Transparency and Advocacy. Please a round of applause for her. Thank you at this point in time. Ladies and gentlemen, all many Nigerians, I want us to rise to the national anthem in conclusion of this communique. Thank